Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at Special Booster 2.0, and that set offers us lots of new and powerful tools in order to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be one of the new decks included in Special Booster 2.0, and that's going to be the Royal Base deck, or Bees for short. So as far as what the deck is actually doing, it seems like the deck kind of wants to be a control style deck where it wants to set up its security in a particular way to be able to get additional effects as well as use it as an extra resource to be able to pull from later in the game. The deck has lots of tools to try to stop the opponent and to deal with their field, which is why I'm leaning towards this deck wanting to be more of a control style deck. Then the deck does have lots of different synergies that you could actually lean into to try to further support the deck in various different ways, utilizing its other traits like Insectoid, Cyborg, and X-Antibody. The biggest weakness of the deck is, unfortunately, the reliance of its security in order to utilize its game plan to its utmost potential. Having cards face up in your security might sound really good, especially since you're getting lots of buffs from them, but it is kind of a double-edged sword as the opponent has that information, knowing that your security won't actually have any threats inside of it, so it allows them to make those decisions a lot easier on what they can aggress with it or want to aggress with because of what their security is. But that's not to say that the deck isn't a lot of fun and doesn't have unique aspects to it that separate it from other decks. So let's just dive right into the deck profile and see what the deck is actually trying to do. Starting off with the Digitamas, I am going to only be running 4 Digitamas. If you want to run a 5th one, by all means do so. Monimon is probably just the best 5th Digitama if you wanted to lean in that direction, but I'm going to be focusing purely on the in-archetype egg because this is, well, important to how the deck is going to be functioning overall, because its inheritable ability states that at the start of our main phase, we get to place 1 Digimon with Royal Base from our hand face up as the bottom card of our security stack, and we get to add the top card of our security stack to our hand. So this is the key setup card to be able to start what Royal Base is doing on making sure that we have really good Digimon in our security that we could use for the buffs and to pull from later. Then when it comes to the level 3s, I'm going to be mostly running in Archetype with the majority of the cards in this deck because BT18 and BT19 both supported Royal Base, and Special Booster 2.0 gave it to us all at once. So as a result, I'm going to be running the 8 fun Beemons that we actually have access to. Both of them are going to have the security ability to give all of our Royal Base traded Digimon plus 1000 DP to make them a little bit stronger. And then the other similarity that these two cards have are the fact that the inheritable ability is just another all turns ability to give our Digimon an extra 1000 DP. But as far as what the other ability of each of these cards is doing is where they start to diversify themselves. So the BT19 counterpart has this nice ability where at the start of our turn, when this Digimon would Digivolve into a Digimon with Royal Base in its traits, then we get to reduce the Digivolution cost by 1, so this just allows for the ease of evolution, allowing us to try to accelerate our game plan faster. Then when it comes to the BT18 Fun Beemon, this is going to be another setup tool because of its on-play ability, allowing us to place a Digimon with Royal Base in its traits from our hand as the face-up card at the bottom of our security, and then we add the top card of our security into our hand. So they're both really good at just working with how the deck is going to be flowing and functioning. But when it comes to the other level 3, this is kind of where we could get interesting in terms of the different tools that we have access to. So the last rookie is kind of a tech or flex spot. I'm just electing to go with 3 copies of Kokabuterimon. So Kokabuterimon is going to be the deck's dedicated searching or digging tool because we get to reveal the top 4 cards of our deck and add any Insectoid traded Digimon Digimon from among them into our hand, which all of our royal-based Digimon are also insectoid, so it's able to grab any of those cards as well. Then, just like the Fun Beamons, it does have an inheritable ability where we get to get an extra plus 1000 DP during all turns while this Digimon is suspended. So if we're going to be blocking or our Digimon just is in a suspended state, then it's going to be a little bit harder for the opponents to deal with. And then when it comes to the level 4s, again, I'm still going to be running mostly in archetype cards. So as a result, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Wasp and 4 copies of Forge Beamon. For the most part, these cards are doing very similar things, with the inheritable ability of just giving plus 1000 DP during all turns, and the security ability basically doing the exact same thing, but more specifically for our royal-based traded Digimon. Then when it comes to what the card's other native abilities is, what's actually separating these cards. So Waspon has this nice ability where during the opponent's turn, none of the opponent's Digimon with as much or less DP can attack a player, so this is going to try to stop basically any level 4 or lower Digimon from trying to deal damage and lower our security, which is super precious to us because that's going to be where a lot of our buffs are going to reside. Then when it comes to Forge Beamon and its native ability, this is arguably the best level 4 for the deck because this is where the protection is, because during all turns, when one of our other Digimon with Royal Base in his traits would leave the battle area by an effect, we get to place this face-up Digimon at the bottom of our security stack, and that Digimon doesn't leave. So basically, it's just sacrificing itself to be able to protect whatever other Royal Base traded Digimon that we want to keep on our field. And then similarly to the level 3s, when it comes to the other level 4s, this is kind of just the tech or flex spot, and again, it could be really whatever you want it to be. I'm just going to be utilizing 2 copies of Kawagamon X Antibody. So this card is an X Antibody and Insectoid traded Digimon, while also having the inheritable to give our Insectoid traded Digimon the piercing ability, so that way we have alternative ways to be able to get access to piercing to try to deal damage to the opponent as consistently as possible. Then when it comes to the level 5s, again, here's just more in archetype cards that we're going to be playing around with. So 4 copies of Cannon Beamon is going to be the primary level 5 that we're going to want to use, but the 2 copies of Vespamon are still needed just because we do care about the royal base trait. So as far as what these cards are actually doing, they have the same security and inheritable abilities. Their security abilities give all of our royal base traded Digimon the blocker ability, while their inheritable abilities allow us to trash the top card of the opponent's security when one of our Digimon deletes the opponent's Digimon in battle, which could be either through offensive means or defensive means. The reason why I'm going to be running more copies of Cannon Beamon is because it is just the better level 5, because its on play and when digivolving ability states that we get to de-digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon for each card that's going to be face up in our security. So ideally, it's always going to, at worst, de-digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon, and right now, de-digivolve is one of, if not the best form of soft removal in the game. And then as far as what Vespamon is doing, it does kind of play into some similar notes as what Cannon Beamon's doing, where it does have that on play and when digivolving ability, but this is more hard removal versus the soft removal that's Cannon Beamon, because we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 2 or less, and then for each card that's going to be face up in our security, we get to add 2 to the maximum range in which this card is able to reach. So obviously, just like Cannon Beamon, the more cards that we have in our security that's going to be face up, the better removal this card is actually going to be. And then when it comes to the other level 5, if you really wanted to, you could just dump it into more copies of Vespamon just for the higher levels of consistency on making sure that you could see your royal base traded Digimon. But I do feel like you could spice up the deck and add a couple of tech cards based on what you actually want out of the deck, and I really do like what BT18 Metal Life Kawagamon is doing, because it also has an on-play and win Digivolving ability where we get to suspend one Digimon. We then get to also have one of our Digimon get plus 3000 DP until the end of the opponent's turn. So I actually do value this DP boost just because it could get our Digimon out of specific thresholds and make it that much harder for the opponent to actually aggress onto us. Then the inheritable ability isn't too shabby either, having an alternative way to defend, because during the opponent's turn, when an opponent's Digimon attacks, we could switch the target to one of our suspended insectoid traded Digimon. So that way we could block and use Metal Life to have basically an additional block. And then when it comes to the level 6s, I am still going to be running mostly in Archetype, but again, we do have the ability to run some extra tech cards to be able to flesh out what the deck is capable of. So as far as the in Archetype level 6s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Queen Beemon as the main mega that we're going to want to use. So this card has the Alliance ability, so that way we could, with another Digimon, suspend that Digimon and be able to give Queen Beemon more DP and an extra security attack, so that way it could be more aggressive. Then she even has a nice when attacking ability that incentivizes us for being more aggressive, where we then get to play out a royal base traded Digimon that's face up in our security and reduce the play cost of playing that Digimon by 8. So this way we can be able to spawn some extra bodies for free and be aggressive at the same time, utilizing the Alliance ability with whatever we just played out. Then the last ability this card has is still pretty decent for what the deck's trying to do, because during all turns, when any of our royal base traded Digimon would leave the battle area other than by battle, we get to place those Digimon face up at the bottom of our security. So that way, it's essentially an alternative way at healing us while being able to reload our abilities and our resources. Then when it comes to the other supporting level 6 that's in Archetype, that's going to go to the 2 copies of Tiger Vespamon. So this is supposedly another really aggressively defensive card because it natively has the Piercing and Reboot ability. Then it does have an on-play and when Digivolving ability itself, just in case you actually want to pay a little bit to utilize Queen Beemon to play out the Tiger Vespamon. But what this ability is doing is for each of our face-up security cards, we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon. Then none of their Digimon can unsuspend until the end of their turn. So it's just a way to try to stun lock the opponent's Digimon down to keep them as useless as possible and then beat them up in the preceding turn. Then he even has a nice all turns ability himself, where when another Digimon is deleted in battle, we get to unsuspend this Digimon. So that way, if we're beating up the opponent's Digimon, we could beat up potentially 2, or if it's blocking, we get to block twice. So it has really good levels of flexibility and usability for how the deck wants to function. Then when it comes to the last level 6 of the deck, I'm just going to be electing to use 1 copy of Grand Kawagamon Ace because it is a card that's in Archetype while also being an ace, so that way we do have some counterplay for what the opponent could potentially be throwing at us. So its on play and when Digivolving ability allows us to suspend 2 of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers. Then cards that are suspended with this effect can't unsuspend during the opponent's next unsuspend phase, and we also get to delete one of their suspended Tamers. So this card is mostly just going to be in here for Tamer hate, which is actually pretty important for where the meta currently is. Then the other ability actually plays very nicely with Queen Beemon, because during your turn, when this Digimon becomes suspended, one of our Digimon gains the security attack +1 ability for the turn, so that way we could use this in combination with Alliance to boost Queen Beemon's damage output even more. And then when it comes to the level 7s, there's not really enough space, at least not the way that I built it, for level 7s, but if you wanted to run some level 7s, here are some pretty good ones you'd want to think about utilizing. But as far as when it comes to the actual tamers of the deck, I'm only going to be utilizing 5 tamers, 3 of which is going to be Winner, which is the in-archetype tamer for the deck. So at the start of our main phase, if we have a face-up card in our security, we're going to be gaining a memory. So that's pretty nice, and not needing the opponents to have something in order for us to gain extra value is always a good thing, allowing us to make our plays more proactive. Then he also has a nice main ability where we get to suspend this tamer and one of our Digimon can digivolve into a Digimon that's going to be face up in our security. If this effect digivolved, then we get to place a Digimon with Royal Base in its traits from our hand face up into our security at the bottom. So essentially what that just boils down to is we could actually use our security like a secondary hand to be able to digivolve into our Digimon, so that way we're never really losing out on resources. And then when it comes to the last tamer, this is another tech or flex spot. It could be really whatever you feel like you want it to be, but I'm just going to be utilizing BT18 Izzy because it's just playing still a little bit into what this deck is trying to do. So Izzy is going to be the dedicated memory fixing tamer, so that way if we're ever less than 3 memory, he's just going to always hard set us to 3. And then his secondary ability is just for more added defense, because during the opponent's turn, when an opponent's Digimon attacks, we get to suspend this tamer and switch the attack to one of our suspended Digimon with Insectoid in its traits, which is basically everything that's Royal Base and everything in the deck. And then when it comes to the options, I'm just going to be running probably the most basic but effective value engine option set that I can possibly run. And for the most part, this is just it for my interpretation of the deck. I do know that there are a lot of ways that we could go about building the deck, which is one of the coolest things outside of just trying to maximize what the core Royal Base engine is trying to do. And I do understand that certain cards are a little bit on the expensive side, namely X-Antibody Protoform. So if you really didn't want to play or didn't have access to X-Antibody Protoform, you could literally just play any card in its place. And we do have an in-archetype option that might be really good for increasing what the deck's capabilities are overall. Then when it comes to just some other useful cards in general, because we do have a lot of different things that we could do with the extra space that we have, there's still just a lot of archetypes that this deck is working with and the synergies that go with said archetypes, as well as some other generic cards that are both in green and black. And then when it comes to some potential future upgrades, there really isn't anything that we know of that's going to be directly supporting Royal Base as a whole, but we do know that we're going to be getting the scramble cards, and we do know that we're going to be getting more memory boost cards as well that could further help what the deck is capable of on a generic level. And anytime we see any insect, X-Antibody, or cyborg support, those are cards that we could potentially think about utilizing to further enhance what Royal Base is trying to do. But for the most part, that's just all I have to say about this deck. I think the deck is a really fun and interesting deck, and it should be relatively easy to make and to build. But feel free to tell me your thoughts about the deck down in the comments below, and while you're down there, you might as well just hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so that way you know when my next videos are going live if you found this video to be helpful and enjoyable. And with that, I hope to see everyone in the next video.